Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from the Govardhan Eco Village in beautiful Maharashtra, India, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kaustubha Das. Welcome to the show, everybody. Welcome back. We're still in India, and it's winding down here, Kaustubha. It's
Still a lot going on, but in one sense, it is winding down.
6 groups here. Dharma Shakti's got like 34 people with her.
Yeah.
We got Bali and Dhanya and Kishore Chandra from New York City here.
But Bhakti
We
group.
got Shama Sundari from, you know what's cool? It's all these people that we've been connected with for a while now, and sort of like a big family reunion.
It is. I
Looking
miss
forward to it.
Gauravani. Gaura's not here.
Miss Gauravani.
You know, he used to always be here this time. Gaura, if you're out there, you got to come. Gauravani, come.
Yes.
You can hear me?
And we're here with a live crew. An international live crew from around the world. Couple kids here too, playing hooky from school for a month. And it's been a great pleasure. You know, I went back to my room and just slept for like an hour and a half. I'm so not like me sleeping in the daytime like that. You're like, yes, so what? Big deal. That's not me.
Okay. All right.
That's not me. And I was, what's up with me?
You need you need a little cold water or something right now? You get ready for the show?
Cold water. That would be good. I need
Anybody
like
got some cold water?
dumped on my head, actually.
So I mean,
Yeah.
you ready to go? You
Yeah,
feeling
I'm ready
good?
to go. I'm ready to go.
Have you woken up
I'm
yet?
trying to get back. Ever got like sleep and you're out of your body? I'm trying to bring
Yeah.
my subtle body back into my gross body.
Okay. Well, you're on the show now, so let's.
Yeah. You just hear my gross body speak. Yeah, we had, and you know, it was nice because getting together with these other group leaders and their crew, the kirtans become more fantastic and phenomenal.
We
It's
had a
just-
great kirtan last night.
It's a lot of beautiful energy. So we kidnapped one of our faves, Dhanya, and we're going to bring her on today.
But before we do
But
that,
before we do that, get your butt back here, Mara. Mara is here with announcements.
We have a Bhakti recovery group meeting at 1 p.m. today, and our showtime will be at 6:30 a.m. all week.
there's another now.
There's
What am I
more.
forgetting?
Yeah.
What you got?
We are now live on
Oh,
TikTok.
Oh, we're live on TikTok.
Well, not
that
live, but we're on
addictive
TikTok.
app
Yeah.
that is soon to be banned in the United States, and that's where they mine your information.
Well, we're on it. You can find us there, Wisdom of the Sages. And you know, I think it's like you always talk about like Tell a Friend Friday, and
Yeah,
I think
now
there's
what's it, TikTok Tuesday.
we have TikTok Tuesday.
That TikTok Tuesday today.
But I
Comes
think
right after Arranged Marriage Wednesday, or
yeah.
you get on TikTok, then we arrange your marriage.
But the nature of like what we'll be posting is just like they're just short, quick little. They're just intriguing, more than like really deeply informative. But it's just like it just shows us engaging with certain ideas. And I think if people see like 1, 2, or 3, they're like, oh, I want to check that out.
I get where you're going with this.
Yeah, so they're
Tell a
easy to
friend
share.
TikTok, we'll call it.
TikTok Tuesday.
Yeah, drag people TikTok Tuesday. Yeah.
You know?
So you can, that's a good thing for people who like what we're doing, think it's a good thing. Besides giving us a percentage of your salary, you can also direct people to TikTok Tuesday, or just to TikTok.
Yeah, we
actually.
got so. If
How
you're-
often are you going to post them, Kaustubha?
we want to start putting up like 3 or 4 things a day.
Ooh.
I mean, we're not, but out of you and I, we were meeting with some consultants.
Yeah, we are like social media
We're useless, and they were saying that you got to get on TikTok and you got to produce 50 videos to get started. And we're like, what?
What?
But then this Dr. Steve Ward out of nowhere up in Canada just started sending us things that he was editing straight out of our thing, and we want to give a big thanks to Dr. Steve just for stepping up and doing this.
Dr. Steve, thank you so much. Hey, if you're good at editing things, chopping things up, making it sound like poignant and useful, send them to Kaustubha or me or Mara at wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com.
Well,
if they're good, we'll use them.
Well, yeah, and we'll
This is the way. It's Kali Yuga. What do people do?
That's how you communicate.
They look at their phone all day long.
Yeah.
Why not give them something with a little depth?
TikTok Tuesday.
Yeah. If they do it enough, they'll stop looking at their phone.
They're so into it, and they don't want their phone anymore. And so I think it'll be a great way, a very easy way to you share this kind of stuff. It spreads out. So I think we just keep putting out stuff. 1 or 2 of these things could go viral and actually reach millions of people. That possibility is always there.
That is the magic. It was Bhakti Siddhanta who called the printing press
the Brihat
Mridanga.
Big drum.
It means the giant drum.
Yeah.
Like you have a little kirtan with your friends, 10 people hear the kirtan. You have a printing press. Isn't it interesting? There was a time where there are no printing presses.
Right.
So the printing press is the Brihat Mridanga, meaning you're going to make that message go so much farther than that you can print books.
Sure.
Internet is the Brihat Mridanga. And
Why not
people
use
it for the most silly things to go viral. God knows the stuff I follow.
Yeah.
But what a great way to spread a message. If people are all just distracted and you give them one thing okay, what is this?
Let me go look into that.
And
what
that
is
rabbit
the podcast?
hole leads them to Wisdom of
Srimad
the Sages,
Bhagavatam.
leads them to the Bhagavatam, and ultimately leads them to like things that really transform your life. People want to transform their lives.
There you go.
But they need like a set of tools to do it. I was going through on my own spiritual path because I wanted a difference in my life. I didn't want to just read a book of wisdom. I was like, okay, now what? I wanted a regular practice, things to add to my life to change myself.
Yeah.
We got you covered. We have a whole sadhana you can apply to your life that starts to redirect your thoughts, redirect your actions, redirect your desires, redirects your idea of what fun is. And it works. It actually works. The Bhakti Yoga program we got for you, not our program. I'm not that smart to come up with a program like this. Time-tested, ancient program, transformation to understand how to love God. And it works.
And it's just a matter of adapting it to the crazy world that we're living in. So this TikTok, which to me always seemed like the most absurd form in the world.
I think it is sort of absurd. It's one of those like crack apps.
Yes, exactly.
You know what I mean?
So
I'm not on it, by the way.
Okay. But
because here's the deal. You don't have my issues. You got your own issues, I'm sure. I don't know what they are.
Got plenty of them.
And
they're probably far more serious.
My issue is I'm easily distracted and things like that. I will never come out of the bathroom. I will just be in that bathroom scrolling around things. Okay. You don't want me near TikTok.
But the
really
point,
good.
The point is that this is the way it can work. Someone sees one TikTok thing, oh, interesting. They see another one, and then a third one. I want to check this thing out. Then they're going to our Instagram page. Then they're going to the podcast, and then the podcast can lead to things to like the sage groups where I'm meeting weekly with people and other things that we want to
retreat.
I'm sorry?
A retreat.
It can lead to a retreat, and it can lead into like the Sage Academy that we want to set up that will, provide all kinds of in-depth study and training that people can get right there online. And another thing that we want to develop really is Sage Care, where it's like the different obstacles, the different challenges that people have in life, in practicing bhakti, that we'll have experts there that can draw from this community. What are the most pressing issues? And help people work those out. So that can all come just from one little TikTok.
Little talk.
Little 30-second TikTok.
Little TikTok.
Thing. So that's the hope. So please, if you use that kind of social media, please follow us there on TikTok and share these things, spread them around, and let's see where it goes.
Yeah. And if you make those things again, because some people just like, I'm going to make funny little things here. Use that little artistic habit you have to make them for us. Email them to us.
Yeah, we can even gradually develop a few kind of like branding guidelines, and then we can kind of pump out more of the stuff. So, and then that being said, you know, about like the obstacles that we run into in life and the things that make it challenging to practice bhakti, or the different dysfunctional kind of relationships that we have in life, challenging things. One of those experts we have here with us today, and that's Dhanya, a person that has become an important part of the Wisdom of the Sages community. She's a relationship counselor professionally. She's, as we saw last night, an extremely talented musician coming from a family of super talented and famous musicians. And just someone that really, I've found, you know, like when I believe that things like relationship counseling are real important, and that we can draw from other sources in terms of, you know, in terms of counseling and psychology and so on. But there's always a need when you do that within the realm of bhakti to keep it kind of like not losing that bhakti foundation of these ancient texts, right?
Sure. And
what I've really appreciated about Dhanya is she's grown up in the bhakti tradition. She's reached out into a world of, you know, therapy, you know, Western therapy, but she's really kept it. She really has a way of keeping it grounded, not drifting off, but keeping it grounded to the bhakti tradition in a really solid way, which I appreciate, because I think it would be harder for us to place our faith. We see in the need for it, but to place our faith in someone if they're not so grounded in it. And so she really strikes a great balance. So Dhanya, we want to welcome you on the show today.
Please welcome Dhanya. Come on down, Dhanya. She's up in the balcony right now. Come on down, Dhanya. Hey, here she is.
Dhanya Rico. Dhanya Rico.
How are you, Dhanya?
You got to get right up to that mic.
Up on this microphone. We're going to share it too.
Do you want to hold it and move it back and forth?
Yeah, maybe we can hold it. Maybe we can hold it and we'll just pass it back and forth. Maybe let
Maybe
Dhanya hold it. Okay. Let's see where we're going with this. I'm getting cut out of this show. I feel some people conspiring against me.
But I wanted to mention that, you know, Raghunath and I, last year, we were invited to go to London to create lengthy kind of courses. We were like, I think mine was like 17 or 18 lessons, and Raghunath, yours was how many? Something like that? Okay.
Can't remember.
Okay.
You got to give me that mic when it's my turn.
It was a lot. But Dhanya has also been called, it's for a new platform. I'm forgetting the name of it now, but it's not out there yet. Do you remember, Dhanya? It's going to be a fantastic platform that's reaching out to a lot of bhakti teachers from different fields and presenting courses. And so Dhanya has designed a course. She shared with me the outline, and I looked at that outline. I know what it means to script 18 lessons because I had to do it myself. Basically, when you're done, you have a book right there, you know, because you can't, when you're reading into the camera, you can't just like wing it. You have to kind of read the script. And so I said, when I looked at that outline, and I said, this is going to be an incredible book. Right, this stuff is really needed. So I'm looking forward to this, and we really want to hear from you, Dhanya. Could you tell us exactly what the course will be about?
Yeah, so the course, it's kind of walking you through some of the basic components of healthy relationships, and that'll address individual things like self-care, dealing with anxiety and depression, and it'll also get down to like really practical nitty-gritty things like how to communicate properly during an argument, or how to give a well thought out, thorough apology.
So tools will be in there, not just theory.
So they're tools that are developed, kind of grounded in, like you were saying, like counseling tools, things that are very like practical that anybody could really use. But then in the background, there's always that notion that we want to tie this to understanding who we are, like our truest self, and how to upgrade our relationships based on that knowledge. So kind of that principle of Sambandha, like actually understanding like, who am I, who are others, and then who is higher power, and then keeping that kind of triangle always as the kind of root of everything that we're working on, rather than just like a bunch of tools that like kind of mend up a relationship, and then you're kind of just still floating in space and not really addressing the ultimate questions that we're all really asking in and out of relationships.
Right. Now, your enthusiasm for this and to do this course in what I assume it will be a book. I hope that's your plan.
Saying that.
It's got to be.
That's a
don't
scary
see how,
idea, but I mean,
you'll already be done.
Sure.
So when you're done, but is it specifically, let me ask you this. Is it dysfunction in Bhakti communities that has kind of created your enthusiasm to address these topics? Not, and I don't want to say like Bhakti communities are more dysfunctional than other communities, but certainly there's dysfunction in our communities.
Yeah, I don't know if the dysfunction created my enthusiasm. It definitely created some frustration.
Yeah.
And so I just realized like I'm fully in. I'm committed to Bhakti. I'm committed to this community. I'm committed to this path and these practices. And whatever isn't working, I can't just like stand by and watch it. I can't kind of like spiritually bypass it and just kind of suggest that we should just chant it away, or kind of some of those things that get thrown around there, and I don't really understand. I personally don't understand how that works in practical day-to-day life. So I just thought, okay, I already have this inclination to learn about these things and to work in this field. I know that I'm committed to Bhakti, but it's kind of like if you see something, say something. Like if there's something there that needs to be worked on, how do I just give whatever I have to work on it? And if I had cooking skills, then it would be in the cooking department. It's just whatever skills I have, I just have to throw it at this, because of course I do see that dysfunction, as I see it in all communities, because most of the people, most of the clients that I work with are not necessarily Bhakti practitioners, and
Sure.
they're embedded in other communities that are super dysfunctional too. So, but this just happens to be the one where I feel like I'm really kind of fully committed. So I have to give whatever I have and whatever I'm learning kind of as like a student teacher, and just throw it at those issues. And that includes many areas. I also do service in like child protection, which I'm like learning and serving simultaneously, because it's just something where it gets to the point where it's like almost unbearable to see things happening and feel like, well, I'm not doing anything about it, so let me
Sure.
just jump in.
Okay, so where maybe you could just share with us like some of the important areas that you'll be covering, and maybe some of the help us understand the nature of these issues or dysfunctions and the kind of answers that you might be sharing there.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, basically, at the beginning of the course, and while I was writing, I was thinking like, at what point is it that the dysfunction starts? Like, what is it? Some theorists or whatever will say like, well, it starts in childhood, and other theorists will be like, well, it's about how you socialize people, or it's like a karmic thing, or it's genetic. There's so many different ways to kind of look at it. But the reality is it happens as soon as you come in contact with like another human being.
Yeah.
Which is why it's so tempting to kind of just be a yogi in like the Himalayas and be, on your own, because so many frictions of life don't happen then.
Right.
So yeah, as soon as you're engaged in relationship with anybody, there's going to be turmoil, because it's human nature, right? And so we're all in relationships, and starting from childhood, which are those initial relationships, all of these like samskaras or impressions are created in the mind. And that environment sort of creates a primer for all other relationships later on. It becomes that point of reference of how it was done in your home becomes what's familiar, even if it wasn't necessarily functional, even if it wasn't necessarily healthy. Or even something explicit. It's not like our parents necessarily said, like, this is what happens when you argue. A lot of times, like, we don't understand what a marriage, for example, is supposed to look like, because we don't know the inside of our parents' marriage. How did they fight? How did they express affection? What did they share in their spiritual life? I would venture to say most people probably don't really know what their parents' marriage looked like.
No idea what's going on.
Yeah. So you grow up kind of without like handbook or manual of like, this is how you do relationships. And then it just becomes trial and error. And with that, you create even more samskaras.
What a mess.
I'm depressed.
Hey, got any good premarital counseling advice? Like way pre.
How pre?
Pretty pre. Pretty pre. Pretty pre. That wasn't a just
Okay, all right.
it wasn't a proposal.
He's got a 16-year-old daughter or 17-year-old daughter.
No, not Imogen. No,
Okay.
yeah. Yes. Let's talk about someone else. No. Yeah. Well, no, people who are like dating and they're thinking, okay, gotta get married. Like, what are some things they should look for? What would you say for premarital couple comes to you? Think, well, we're thinking about getting married.
before they actually get, before they actually order the placemats, right? The napkins that are printed and
the China.
whatever they have for their weddings. I've never done a wedding. I went a Hare Krishna wedding, but before they spend a lot of money for that expensive wedding, what are some first things they should learn before they spend a lot of money on a divorce? Sometimes people spend more money or thoughts and energy and resources on preparing a wedding than the preparation for how can I keep committed? How can I work out all my dysfunction from trauma that happened to me that I'm bringing to the coupleship, and then I'm going to start blaming her or him for everything that went wrong in my life. So how can I protect themselves from that? Oh, I got an idea. Kaustubha's trying to give me
because I think this way better than
to me in sign language. I was like, don't understand sign. I get it. Now he spun a chair around. He wants me to go onto that.
It makes more sense that way. You and I can fight over the mic, and then you can just have one for herself. And the questions will be coming from one direction.
And I tend to scream a
little distance helps.
I don't want to scream to the therapist because afterwards you're going to write up a thing on me. Okay, here's your bill, and you've got anger issues. Here you go. I'm going to the other one.
So
that's my question.
Get her framed up nice, and then. Here we go. You can come right over here and you can read the chat board here all you want.
Am I okay?
But I'm going to hold the mic. Here we go. This is good now.
Yeah. So, I mean, to kind of answer what you were saying, for premarital counseling, it's interesting because, well, one important question would be to ask them, why do you want to get married? What does marriage mean to you, right? Marriage, for many people, it's just like an automatic thing. Like, I'm with somebody, we've been together for a certain amount of time. I want to express that commitment in some way. Well, we just get married, and that's what everybody does. And, I like the idea of calling this person my wife, or I like the idea of calling this person my husband, or I want to legitimize my relationship in a community by ritualizing it. And those are all like surface reasons to get married. Right. So there's deeper reasons to get married. And it kind of goes back to that same principle of samskara, which is you want to create a super powerful impression, because that impression will generate sort of like waves out into your life that are supposed to fortify your spiritual life. Right. And so if your idea is, for example, to start a family, you would want the wedding to be a commitment, not just to your partner, but to the community, that you're going to live by certain values, and you're professing those values as part of the wedding ceremony. And then that is how you plan to raise your children, because those children will be in this community and will impact how everybody else functions, because we don't exist in a vacuum. I plan to expand my family, or to, create this relationship with this person in such a way that it impacts my community positively. I commit to that here in front of my community, because I understand that the ups and downs of my relationship will affect everybody else. These guests who are sitting here is actually like a super powerful, like interpersonal, not contract, but sort of agreement or commitment that you're making. When it goes to those deeper levels, then a couple can start having real conversation. Well, what are those values?
Sure.
Do we want to start a family? What does our married life look like? How do we practice spirituality together? So on.
I get the commitment, but it seems like there's a lot of preparation preceding commitment. And so I'm trying to like drill into like, what is the preparation then? Because it's easy to say, you know what, let's go do it. We're going to do it because we believe in commitment, but just to believe in it doesn't, because everybody believes in it on the day of the wedding,
right,
for the most part.
Right.
There are a few that probably don't, like, what am I doing? There's probably a few of those too, but ideas to prepare,
yeah. Well, one thing that I was reading recently is that research is coming out that shows, and unfortunately these are done with animal studies, but research shows that when we have trauma, that trauma becomes encoded in our genes, right? In our genetic code. And then we pass that on
through generations. I heard this, right?
Yeah. So what ends up happening is that exists even when the parents and the children don't cohabit.
Even when the parents and the children don't
In other words,
cohabit.
you pass your trauma on to your children, even if you never meet your children.
never meet
Practically, it's
children.
genetically it's passed down.
What to speak of if that trauma is expressed through your behavior, which it inevitably is. So let's say that I plan to marry somebody and I want to start a family with them, but I haven't worked through those issues. They're locked into my genes. Even if I'm not even consciously aware of them, it's going to be expressed in how I deal with people.
So we should tell our partners, I'm not going to be having any kids with you until you work your issues out.
Yeah, and they could be passed down through bloodlines of angry Italian men.
Yeah, and so basically that's just an example to show that like the things that have happened to us, we can't just kind of move past them or pave over them. They're going to come out in our most intimate relationships, like our marriages and like our parent-child relationships. So one of my suggestions would be for each person to kind of look back into their personal history and take an inventory of what do you think those powerful samskaras are, and they could be positive or negative. What were important things that happened to you in your life that you think might have shaped who you are
Mm.
and how? And then as you kind of work through those samskaras, especially let's say the negative ones or the ones that have created an impact that we may still be processing or that have left an impression even on a physiological level, working through those very consciously. Okay, what was it like growing up in my house? Well, my family had anger issues, or I never understood how my mom really felt because she was really cryptic, or I grew up in a single parent household, so I don't even know what a functional relationship really looks like, or I had issues with a sibling. You know, all of these kinds of things that essentially make us who we are. I need to work on that before I jump in and live with somebody where I'm going to be kind of perpetuating those samskaras because it's what's familiar. I'm just going to recreate that. So then maybe I'll be the cryptic person in the relationship, or I'll constantly feel like panic and I need to decipher my partner, even when they're not being particularly cryptic, just because that's the household that I came from. So basically and that's an easy first step because it doesn't necessarily mean like a deep dive into like trauma work and that kind of thing. It's just taking an inventory of what were these powerful moments and why do you think they were so powerful? What effect did they have on you? And discussing that with your partner. And it's also important because then your partner understands where you're coming from, especially if your partner comes from a different upbringing or had different life experiences, comes from a different culture. It's understanding like, oh, this is why you are the way you are, right? For better or for worse, like in the marriage vows, this is why you are the way that you are. And then this allows me, when the fire starts to rise in an argument or a fight, it allows me to get you rather than get stuck on the friction and say, well, why do you talk to me that way? And I don't like your tone. And, you know, saying, wait a minute, what was her family like growing up? Why does he speak to me this way? Or why is she, you know, acting this way? It creates compassion in the relationship. Right. And then also self-compassion because you see why we do the things that we do.
So it seems like the best thing we can do for a marriage going forward is to work out all our personal stuff first, or at least correct.
We might not ever get married.
Well, maybe better off that. It seems like the best thing I
Maybe
can
we shouldn't be reproducing.
continuing our
That's
bloodline.
It's interesting because, you know, I mean, even in the Gita, it says like unwanted progeny is the downfall of society. So if you create relationships and you're not ready, and then you create more relationships by creating kids, what's happening, you know?
But so it seems like couples therapy a lot of times can be avoided if we just work on our own therapy and be at least first. Or else I'm just bringing all my stuff to the relationship. I mean, relating, that seems like we should be able to relate. But if I'm not working on my own stuff, I will just be the blamer. I will take all my issues and project them on my partner. And they're the reason why I have issues. And would you recommend personal counseling before you get into premarital counseling, or even thinking about marriage? Probably could be the smartest thing that you could do for your long-term marriage.
Yeah,
you know,
I mean, I don't see why they couldn't happen simultaneously. You know, most people go to couples counseling 6 years, statistically 6 years after like really serious problems start.
Right.
6 years. That's like imagine how much trouble is compounded over 6 years.
Right.
You know? And many people go to couples counseling as their last ditch effort before they end the relationship. Like, well, we tried, so that they can say something like, well, we tried couples counseling and it didn't work out.
Everybody
Right?
says that.
there's no reason why you can't do both, right? Like I usually give the example of like, you don't want to wait till you're terribly unhealthy to go to the gym. You want to be going to the gym kind of regularly to keep up your health. So the same thing
Preventative.
would be said for counseling.
Yeah.
Here's a question in relation to all this. Part of me says, come on, do we all have to be in counseling like before we get married? You know, is it like, aren't we like, can't we just be normal people that just, you know, is it, do I have to be totally concerned about my genetic code? And even still, as a bhakti practitioner, if I go out and I find some counselor, is it very possible that their counseling may kind of misdirect me in terms of my devotional life?
Yeah, it's a super important question, because counseling wasn't like created in a vacuum. It's created as a reflection or embedded in a certain culture. So if your culture is like consumerism and capitalism and, you know, achievement orientation and all these things, then a lot of counseling modalities might just patch you up so that you can pop back into your 9-to-5 work week, patch you up into your like, you know, exploitive relationships where I just want, you know, the next best thing. And if that relationship's not working out for you, then you do you, take care of your needs, like look out for yourself. And like, there's more fish in the ocean or whatever it is. So yeah, we have to be careful what kind of culture the therapist is projecting into the counseling space, because they're bringing themselves into it too.
I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, I just think it's important for us to be like informed consumers. If you're going to go to a counselor and you're going to be kind of opening up and being very vulnerable and sharing yourself and opening yourself up to their influence, they should be somebody who's culturally compatible with you.
So what's your favorite type of counseling or therapy for people dealing with whatever it's anxiety, stress, overwhelm, trauma? Is it, do you talk your way out of this? Do you take micro doses of mushrooms? Is it hypnotherapy or what? I'm curious, like what do you find to be the most effective way to deal with people?
You know, I think each person could probably have like a tailored experience just for them based on what they need. So for some people, talking something through works really well. And and I would venture to say that basically everybody needs to have a physical component of healing along with their emotional issues. There has to be a body component, because all these issues are stored in the body, and that's sort of an inevitable thing. So always some modality that encourages or at least gives importance to like physiological processing, self-regulation. Like I learned how to regulate my body, my nervous system, and therefore also my mind, because the nervous system and the mind are connected. And then also co-regulation, like you were saying, like, you know, or, you know, Kaustubha, you were saying like, so should we never do this? And the reality is that there's certain kinds of issues that are impossible to work through unless you're in a relationship. So you actually need to get married. You actually need to have kids so that these relationships come.
Yeah, Kaustubha. I've been trying to tell him you should have had kids. What are you doing? Now you needed to do that. Okay. Your life will not be perfected now. Sorry.
You're my kid.
You're my mean father.
We need help.
I think me and Kaustubha need counseling.
I got your mushrooms ready whenever you're ready.
I think that might have been the original problem. Okay. So Raghunath was kind of saying, like, do we need to work out our own stuff? And I think there'll be chapters or lessons in your course that deal with working on our own issues. Yeah. Can you speak a little to that?
Yeah, so a lot of it has to do with kind of conscious self-care, which is, it's a sticky word because it gets thrown around so much, and it just becomes like this kind of like self-indulgent, also kind of very consumery, like, well, what I need is a bubble bath, or what I need is a shopping spree.
I say that too. I say bubble bath too all the times. Mani-pedis.
Yeah, and so the reality is that it's actually, it goes way more straightforward if you focus on the nervous system. So the definition I usually give is whatever you need to do to take care of your nervous system so you could get back to your spiritual work. And for some people, maybe that is a bubble bath, but I would venture to say that it probably is something more like a conscious breathing practice, some sort of physical exercise where you can get focused. It means toning down your environment so that you can become grounded, reducing the like visual or even like auditory noise in your life. It could be having a safe space where you can kind of ground in, a meditation practice like japa meditation or listening to kirtan. So things that actually, sometimes it's like self-touch. Some people do like EFT, like tapping.
What about
Things.
animal therapy, like your pet animals and things like that?
Well, is it self-care if the animal's helping you?
Oh, okay.
Well, yeah, it is, right?
I don't know.
Like you can't use an animal.
Well, like it's good for me to.
It's probably good for the animal too.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think Kaustubha, you would be you'd be
need
a
more
better
animals.
man with a dog in your life.
Okay. That was just such a setup, Raghunath. I won't go there.
I
Did you sink
I
into
heard
the
the
down
rest
drop?
of the sentence. Yeah, so I think self-care would address that, and then also kind of getting to the root of like, okay, well, what is anxiety and what is depression, and is it necessarily a bad thing in spiritual life? And that question is posed, I think, in all the important stories of like the Gita and the Bhagavatam, which is people are presented with enormous challenges that generate feelings of anxiety and depression, and how they navigate that in their spiritual life, not apart from their spiritual life. So it's just a natural part of the human condition. There will be things that cause anxiety and will be things that cause depression. So I'm either going to use that as fodder for this, spiritual upliftment, or it's going to kind of be like this wet blanket that prevents me from growing into my spiritual life. And a lot of that actually has to do with the community that I'm in.
That they'll, how so?
Well, if I'm not able to maybe work through certain issues on my own, because by nature I'm a social being, by nature I'm dependent on relationships to help me see through certain things, then my community will kind of be my elevation or my downfall. Because if I'm in the association of people who I can't really be myself or be authentic, be vulnerable with, share my struggles, who don't have compassion or empathy for me, who can't hold a safe space or hold non-judgment for me, then I'm not really going to be able to work through those issues with anybody's help. And that isolation is actually going to compound those issues. But if I'm in a community where I feel not judged, where I feel welcome, where I'm able to process things out loud as they're happening to me without feeling like I'm losing face or like I need to uphold an image, it allows me to be real. And only when I'm real can I really like assess what's going on and get help.
Write that. You should write that down.
Okay. All right. Well, this actually leads to a question, something I've been thinking about a lot. We had this episode recently. We got a really beautiful letter from a woman who she shared that she had a very difficult childhood. By the time she was 17, she was divorced with a child. Then she went into another difficult relationship. She had 3 more children, and that was abusive as well. She got out of that. But she found Krishna consciousness. She found bhakti. Then she found this podcast, and it was really giving her life. But at the same time, just to survive and to provide, she became an exotic dancer. And there was this tension within her about like, how I'm making my living. I try to do it, she said, like as professionally as possible. But at the same time, she was feeling horrible feelings of guilt and
integrity.
Yeah, unworthiness. And she heard a podcast that we did which it was Prabhupada, you may be familiar with, where Prabhupada says in his commentary, to this day in the cities of India, there are prostitutes who are great devotees of Lord Krishna, and they've fallen into this circumstance by some trick of chance. But still, they're great devotees. And she said when she heard that, she began to cry, and she said for the first time in her life, she felt feelings like worthiness for God's love. But I've been thinking since we received that letter and we talked about it more on the show, I've been thinking, I would imagine in all spiritual or religious communities, and maybe even particularly like in the bhakti communities as they've manifested in the past few decades in the Western world, and not just Western world, the whole world. But maybe this is just a super key thing, that we feel the need to project purity. And we actually feel that it is wrong to show our own vulnerability, to come forward and in a sense be very real, when it almost seems like it's traditional to put forward the facade of purity, like that person is more traditional. But when you look deeper into the tradition, it's so much of it is about integrity and honesty and humility.
Yeah. What do you need to share today?
I wanted
What
to
do you
talk
need to
you.
share? What do you need to talk
I
about?
wanted to get this off my chest, people.
We're here for you.
This is a safe space, Kaustubha.
I want to just add to that. I think Kaustubha's hitting the nail on the head because I find, especially within the Bhakti community, and I'm sure this everywhere, we're into like some moral standard and ethical standard and ritual standards, and therefore, publicly you have to present. And there's hierarchies, and the person's a guru or a person's a leader, a person's a president of a temple, so they've got to present. And whenever you've got to present and you don't have the opportunity to share in an organized opportunity where you can share and bare your soul, you create sort of an outer shell being and then an inner shell secret. And to the degree we keep secrets, what's my saying, Mara? We're as sick as our secrets, and so we create a duplicitous life where I have to present one way, but I have a whole secret life that I can't share because I'll lose my position, or I'll lose my reputation, I'll lose my integrity. The opposite's true. I think when people are very sincere and on a spiritual path, but they're vulnerable, people appreciate that. It allows the door to open. So, vulnerability, okay, here, that's good. I really think that's like a benefit of any 12-step program, and especially what we love in the Bhakti recovery program,
For sure.
is because it's sort of like recreating how Vaishnavas can relate and just walk into that and just bare their soul and have an outlet for it. Because it almost seems like for people who are really struggling with material existence, you don't need a therapist once a week. You need a therapist 3 times a day, all the time.
God.
You're gonna be working overtime.
But do you have thoughts on that? Similar feelings?
Yeah, I mean, I think, in the Nectar of Instruction, it says like to inquire confidentially and to reveal your mind and confidence. It's one of the loving exchanges. There's only 6 loving exchanges, and it's gifts, food, and sharing your mind. Right?
We're pretty good at the food.
We're pretty good at food. I'm waiting for more gifts, but I guess you got to give some to get them. But sharing your mind, you really need to find a few people that you trust, that you feel like are walking the path either with you, or with you. There's people that you walk with you, but you also look towards them. You look up to them. And that's good too. What to speak of teachers who can hold that space for you. And it needs to actually be practiced. It's not just like written there in the book. You really need to, okay, maybe I'm not going to share all the stuff. Maybe Kaustubha's not going to share all of his pain, all of his hurt, all of his woe, with everybody, but he needs somebody to share it with, right?
Yeah. Well, the Brene Brown, she does research on shame and vulnerability. And she says she has this really great talk called The Anatomy of Trust. And she talks about how the people who you really like reveal your full self to, who you really can kind of like show up in full and be your full, authentic self and really bear the things that you're struggling with, all their names should fit on a 1-by-1 square of paper.
Okay.
So if you can imagine how many names could really fit. Right?
Right, real small, maybe like 4 or 5 or something.
Yeah, there is that art of writing very, very small.
But what if their names are really long? Like
Yeah.
So basically what she's saying is that it's not that you have to be bearing your soul to everybody, but like you're saying, you do need a core group of people who really see you and who really value you. And then if pockets of that are happening everywhere, then you're actually tackling on a community level that vulnerability and that authenticity. Authenticity doesn't mean I show you everything all the time. Authenticity means, like you said, I practice what I profess. And if I'm not, then I'm okay to admit that. But that's only going to happen in a safe space. Because if I feel like there's judgment or shaming, or that like the image is valued over the realness, then of course I'm not going to share what I'm struggling, because there's going to be kind of negative results from that.
Would you say your spouse should be that person, or should it exist outside the relationship?
I mean, it would be ideal, because probably for most of us, our ugliest version of ourselves may come out with our spouse, just because we're with them all the time and because so many important experiences happen with that person. So ideally that would be the person, one of the people
Mm.
who we can come to as our full selves, who fully accept us and will also challenge us to upgrade. It's not this unconditional acceptance where they don't encourage you to move past that and grow. It's quite the opposite. I know you, and so not only do I see what you're struggling with, I see your potential maybe even better than you do because I'm so close. That kind of love is the kind of love that grows you into your next version of yourself. It's super not comfortable, but it's the right direction to head. And that's ideally what that relationship is for in terms of like self-work.
Mm. All right. Putting it all towards my relationship book I'm working on.
Other important thoughts from the course that you're developing?
I mean, I think in general, you know, the theme of safety just comes up a lot. How to make yourself feel safe, how to create safety in relationships.
Safety in terms of communication.
Safety in terms
and
of
opening up.
communication, emotional safety, safety to explore your spiritual life and be able to fall and get back on the horse. You know, not like these practices are amazing, I'm like on a roll. And now that I'm on a roll, I can never show anybody if I'm like slipping or if I'm questioning or expressing doubts or having a hard time. Now I just have to keep, you know, safety meaning like, what are you really dealing with? And that's okay here. And we're all really dealing with these things, and let's lift each other up and encourage each other. And like you said, the 12-step programs are such a great example of that.
You know, it seems like, and there's different phases of your life, the whole pre-marriage thing, like the things that pop out for me is, do you want kids? Where do you want to live? Are you expecting me to provide for you, or are we both working? How does that work? How do finances work out? What religion are we going to raise the child in if we do have a child? How many children would you actually want? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you see us in 5 years? How would you like to retire? When do you have is there a retirement plan? This is, I'm pretty good at this. I'm pretty good. And that's one phase of life. Then there's the coupleship, which
You don't need a degree or anything like that.
I could even put that part of my bio, relationship counselor, premarital counselor,
You could.
botanist, part-time botanist,
All my
gentleman
student
farmer.
loans for nothing.
Then there's the relationship. Then you got to deal with that. That brings up a whole thing. Then yesterday I was leading the kirtan. I saw you with a baby in each arm. And I'm thinking, yep, this is the next phase. How do you do spiritual life when you got 2 kids? That is something you will never know, my friend. I will never.
I do know.
No, you don't. You don't know
Every
that.
day.
You don't know that.
You do know, and maybe that's why you skipped right over it.
But that's a whole thing, because here they are. You just want a little piece. You want to come to kirtan, and baby number 1's wah, baby number 2's wah, and you got to be like, all right, what do I do? The kid getting sassy. The kids are getting loud. Kids are losing their mind. Can't we have peace? That's a whole nother book for me or you.
Maybe we should co-write it.
We can co-write that. Yes. Okay. Yeah, it seems like any one of those levels needs a whole nother.
Yeah, sure. And a good relationship therapist will always tackle the practical things, because it's all good, you know, when you're saying like, yeah, we should have shared spirituality. But a real question is like, all right, do you wake up early in the morning and practice your spirituality?
Like, that's
Do
a
you
real
want to do
one.
this on your own? Is this something you want to share? You know, like Bali, my husband and I, we do kirtan together. Not everybody shares a service with their spouse. Sometimes that creates friction.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of thing. Taking pilgrimages to India, some people really feel called to do that, and some people are like, I'm really not into the traveling component of spiritual life. So yeah, it has to be grounded in the practical part. And like I said, as an informed consumer, as you're tackling those questions, if the person that you're seeking help from is not really grounding it in that, and you would like that, then that's something you have to talk about. It's super important.
Mm.
So we're getting close to the end here. And I noticed that one of the topics that's in the outline of the course that you're developing is self-study. And you mentioned getting to know yourself in order to grow, including past, present, and future selves, and identifying personal values. Are there any, like, you know, now we're coming to the end, sometimes it's good to come, if maybe you can share a couple tools with us or something like that. Is there any practical advice you could give us in how to better do that, or any tools or something like that?
Yeah. So one of the things that I talk about in the self-study portion is to take a look at the story of my life. And that changes actually according to where I'm at today. So the story of my life that I told 5 years ago sounds pretty different than the story of my life that I tell now, because it's always kind of modulated by my experience now, the lens of who I am now. So sometimes it's a nice practice in a journal, like handwritten. So again, you like engage the body. It's not like just typing it out like a zombie, like actually handwriting, moving that energy through your hands. The story of my life on a timeline, the story of my life as a narrative, and saying what in each kind of like age group, let's say like really young childhood, what can I remember? Middle kind of elementary childhood, middle school, high school, so on, each kind of like cluster of years. What are things that really impacted me and why? And then seeing how that kind of composes a story that you tell about yourself, even though it's really just a series of events.
Sometimes I'm wonder if I'm even capable of doing that. Like, can I understand what was impacting me when I was 5 years old? Can I sometimes, like at this age, like I'll visit my parents, which I rarely do, and I'll just get some clue about something that I never understood before. And now I'm like 57 years old, and I didn't even understand up until like, a few weeks ago, I didn't even kind of get, and I'm still not even sure if it's right. So is that an easy thing to do, or?
Sometimes I suggest going for like sensory experiences that you might remember more so than like trying to understand. Because a lot of what happens before like age 7 is considered like pre-verbal. It's not like a kid is like intellectualizing or has the language to kind of process experiences, but you have like memory imprints that come from your senses. Like for example, like at my grandma's house, when it would rain, the city of Caracas where we grew up, it would like smell a certain way. And I can kind of memory recall that and kind of feel myself in my grandma's house. And now as an adult, as you're saying, now that I think about that, I'm like, what can I think about or remember now that I'm older and I have context about what was going on then? How did I feel? I felt cozy. I felt loved. I felt right. And so it's not so much like what was going on for me. Can I analyze my family? It's basically saying like, what were prominent sensations or feelings at these different time periods in my life? And taking a guess. This is not like an analysis you can do on your own, but taking a guess, allowing your intuition to guide you and say, how has this shaped the story I tell myself about myself? Right. And then, so that's, let's say that's the past self. And that's a very gentle kind of based on feelings and sensations, not any like deep archaeology. That is probably better to do with someone who's like a trained professional. Then in the present self, it's basically saying, what fills my day up now? Like if I actually had like a pie chart of how I spend my time, what would it actually look like? And then if I had a pie chart of how I want to be spending my time, what would that look like? And then can I start to shift just a few minutes a day in that direction? Because inevitably the things that we do every day become who we are, right? Our habits become our character because it's based on repetition. Everybody, I mean, the military knows that. They make you do a drill over and over and over again. And then when you're put in the line of fire, it's muscle memory. That happens with every habit that's ever been created. You just do it enough and it kicks in like muscle memory. So that happens with all my best habits and all my worst habits too. Right. And so the idea would be to kind of like take a sort of snapshot of what a day in my life looks like and seeing if that's what I want a day in my life to look like. Right. And then we get into the future self, which is, let's say I keep living my life exactly like I live my life right now. What is that going to look like for me in 5 years then? What's that going to look like in 10 years? What's that going to look like in 20 years? If I keep eating the way I eat, if I keep engaging in the relationships that I do, if my boundaries look exactly as they do now, what does this look like further along? And then if it needs to change, what could that look like further along? How will I feel, right? And then kind of that way we can kind of string together all three selves.
This sounds like the kind of thing you really got to get down on paper in order to look at it all. Yeah? Do you think so, or?
Like a book, you mean?
No, I just mean if I'm going to do this with my own life and then begin to project,
Absolutely.
but maybe the book could have a little like a little
Like
you
a
know, worksheet
Yeah,
kind
I
of
mean,
thing.
I definitely encourage this to be a journaling practice, and I encourage whatever your realizations are, as you feel ready, which it may not be right away, to share it with somebody in confidence. Because as you do, as you open up about these things, I don't know if you guys have ever had the experience, like you'll have a memory or you'll have like an impression, and then you talk to somebody about it, and as you're talking you start remembering more. You're like, oh my god, and then this happened and that happened. That's a real thing. It's like memory triggered by you engaging in conversation, because there's parts of you that are activated that way rather than alone. So sharing with somebody in confidence, it doesn't have to be a professional, it just has to be somebody that you trust, and seeing what flows from that, and maybe even being open to feedback. A good friend or your spouse or a spiritual guide saying something like, you know what I've noticed in you, now that I know this about your childhood, or now that I know this about your upbringing, I can see how that shows up in your day-to-day life, this or this or this way, right? And so engaging in that conversation where you allow somebody to kind of reflect back to you what they hear and what they see in you. And then there's that co-regulation piece. I'm studying myself, but I bring it into the relationship, whatever I've checked out. And then my partner in the relationship, whoever that may be, says, yeah, here's what I think. That kind of thing.
Can I ask one last final question? Like in my whole life, I think the only time I really had any kind of like real counseling was like in high school. They just looked at me and like, this kid is such a complete mess. We got to like put him in front of someone, you know? But since then, you know, nothing. But I'm just wondering if a bhakti yogi it has what you're saying for real, if they have a few good friends, trusted people, sober people, wise, insightful people, is it that we all need some sort of counseling, or can that be a dynamic enough? Is it in the world that we've grown up in, we're just too screwed up, or is it, or could that be like enough to really provide what a person needs for self-transformation?
I think that if there is a philosophy and culture that can create people that are that genuine and honest and good listeners, it's the Bhakti tradition. If there's a tradition that can do it, it's ours. It should be ours. So we should be creating solid enough practitioners that we don't need counselors.
Right.
And we can practice that.
Like that.
That's what I'll say. I don't necessarily think I can throw out there that we don't need counselors, because that's my job.
Okay. You're out of a job.
But I do think that these are skills that we can acquire and we can practice to such an extent, match with the philosophy, match with the spiritual practices, and match with the living examples that we have. I mean, living examples of like really powerful sadhus and spiritualists who embody all these values. That is the counselor.
You know, I was thinking that I don't have so much experience with 12-step. I've never been to a 12-step, but I have some, you know, a lot of people that I know have gone through them. And the impression that I get is, on one hand, I think it's definitely running parallel with Bhakti, so many of the principles and so on. On the other hand, we have so much on top of that. But that being said, I can see real traction in what they're doing. Like, it's effective, it's really working, you know, and that must have something to do with the humility. When you hit that rock bottom, you're just like, and you're not putting up any facade whatsoever.
And the protocol is you have to share on a regular basis, even when you don't want to share.
And that seems to be a community where like people are counseling each other. You have your sponsor. They may not be a professional counselor, but there's someone that has walked certain steps, that has a certain protocol to know how to operate in this role, and they can be really helpful. And maybe in Bhakti Yoga, that's when we're sharing our minds in confidence, it's someone that's got that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Right?
And also, you know, an important component in the 12 steps is that they don't like import a non-addict sponsor to come and guide you. It's somebody who they themselves have been through it, and they're open to talking about how they've been through it.
Yeah.
They're transparent, they're authentic. So it's that same vulnerability of like, hey, I am also struggling with this. This is what I have learned. I may be a few steps ahead of you, or a few years sober longer than you. I'm happy to take you under my wing, because I understand to the extent that I share, I also heal. So it's that piece of our leaders or our guides have to be, to a certain extent, transparent about their own struggles and how they have been through what we have been through. And that's what qualifies them to guide us. Because if someone just walked in and was, you know, just had never dealt with any of these things, then it would be impossible to feel that deep connection.
Nice.
Real nice.
You know, on the chat board, people are saying this should be a regular show. I think you have to have your own regular show to your book and podcasts.
Yeah.
People are calling for it.
Maybe me and you. together.
I was thinking.
And I was thinking maybe we can help you with some of your bottled up,
No.
deep down childhood,
What I was thinking-
pre-5-year-old issues.
What I was thinking is Raghunath and I could be on the couch and you could be counseling because we give you plenty to work with.
Yeah, we can help. We can help.
Was it?
3 times a day. 3 shows a day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much.
And thanks to Dhanya. That was fun.
Yeah. And speaking of Dhanya,
Speaking of Dhanya,
you're on
what?
this, right? You're on this?
I'm in the background. Yeah.
Oh, Dhanya actually plays on our song. What?
Yeah.
That's a Christian miracle. Thanks, everybody, for joining us here.
TikTok.
Remember TikTok Tuesday. You go to TikTok and subscribe to Wisdom of the Sages. Everybody should do that except myself because I'm not letting them information mine me and send it to China.
That means I could be doing anything I want over there and you're not even going to know.
You can do whatever you want. If it wants to be just the Kaustubha TikTok channel, that's fine with me. And I want to thank everybody who has been showing up, even though our schedule's crazy. Really want to thank all the Zoomers. You want to join Zoom, you email Mara. She'll send you the secret codes to join Zoom. That's wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com. We read all our emails, so send us email. And sometimes we read them on the show if you allow us with permission. If you like what we're doing, support us. It's a community-supported podcast. For the price of that expensive latte, you could keep this boat floating a long time. Thank you very much. You would go to patreon.com/Wisdom of the Sages. I want to really thank everybody who supports us. It makes a big difference. Thank you, Dhanya. People love you on the message board. People love you in real life. And we love you here at Live Live. Woo! Oh. This is a good song. Right here.